Okay, so here's our certification process. Once you get at this point, the assumption is you've already submitted all your data, all the required files with zero errors, and you're ready to review any certification errors. Now, if you haven't submitted all of the data yet, it doesn't make sense to go to this section, to the certification stage of your submission, because chances are you'll freak out and see a lot of certification errors. So the workflow normally is, again, you submit files and then you go to your certification and see if there are any certification errors. These are errors that is based on records that you already posted in CalPads. And so anything that is missing that has to be validated between two files will then trigger more errors for you. Now, once all of those errors are cleared, you then review all of your reports to see the accuracy of the reports. And then, of course, once you run the reports and you see that everything is okay, and also once you've disseminated those reports and you get the green light from other departments or other staff you've involved with, then you can click on the LA approve button. For end of year one, you have full control of your certification because we won't rely on the SELPA to have a second approval. So everything is on you. Okay. So with that, let me just bring up the certification page. To access the certification page, of course, you need to have the data certification role. Otherwise, you will get an error. So if you're a K to 8 or K to 12 or 7 to 12, chances are you will see this end of year one completion. Now, if you're a K to 8 and your 7 to 8 are all self-contained, you will still see this and you will still be required to certify. If you have self-contained classes, you still have to certify the reports with zero counts, okay? Now, if you have departmental courses, then by all means, you have to make sure that all of your data are in. So let's click on the end of year one certification, and it should bring up our certification details. Okay, so here's your certification details. You have your summary, you have the status, revised and certified. So there are some functionalities that you need to be aware of, especially with the revision status. If you have a version froze into in review uncertified, and then you have a new version, then you have to switch and toggle to this. There is a training on the entire certification process and the nuances on it. We will put that on the chat box for you to review, but essentially we won't delve into that. I just want to highlight the pages you need to look at before we go into certification error demo. So you have here your certification validations, you have your summary of errors, fatal errors, I mean, and then you have your certification warnings. Okay, so in this section, even though these are warnings, and in the context of end of year one and receiving CTEG funding or Perkins 5 funding, it is important that you be aware and look at these warnings. So if you have a high school who is receiving funding, CTEG funding, chances are, or if you have a high school that you're getting a Cert 55, you have to determine why. And sometimes this might be schools with who are receiving CTEG funding. Then this is something that you should be aware of. You have to then submit your SCTE, submit your courses related to CTE. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that you're getting funding and not reporting, justifying that funding to CalPads. Okay. And then you also have your CERT 169, which is new this year. And this is for your WBLR data. If you haven't had the chance to implement WBLR collection, then you will get this error. Okay. However, it is encouraged that you start the process and do your best to report the information into CalPAS. That way, you have acquired the knowledge to be able to report that data, and in preparation for next year, maybe the CERT 169 will then be moved into the fatal column, and then you're required to submit WBLR data. So these are some warnings you have to be aware of. And then, of course, you have your certification reports. It doesn't make sense to review this if you still have cert errors. Okay, clear the errors. Once you have a new snapshot and the errors are down to zero, then review these reports. Once you review all four, and of course it is expected that you review the supporting reports, a small box will appear here. Check that box saying that all your reports are accurate, and then an LA approved button will appear here, and then if you click on that, you're done with your end of year submission. And then here's your snapshot history as well. And this gives you a historical progression of your error resolutions. And so this is normally where we look at what we look at if we see that if we have an LEA and we monitor the progress of their submission. At least that's how I do it personally. So that's the summary of this page. Let's go into the error resolution. Okay. So common to all end of year submissions is your Cert 4. Okay. If you click on that, there is a tutorial that will help you determine and look at this error. Okay. So essentially, cert force that you have to account for all demographic records that are missing ethnicity data that is overlapping this current academic year. So make sure all of the effective dates, look at the effective dates, and that should resolve the error. But let's focus on cert 123 because this is applicable to end of year one and specific to end of year one, of course. So you have your cert 123. If you click on that, it should bring up our error resolution, but let's click on show. So I just want to demo how to resolve a CERT 123. It's essentially a missing or invalid SCSC record for a CTE completer. Essentially, CalPAS is saying that, hey, you submitted an SCTE record identifying this student as a CTE pathway completer to a specific pathway code this year. However, we don't see the capstone course in the student section. That's what it's saying. Okay, so we have two students here and we have the cert error. So let's click on that. And then, so cert 123 states that no student course section was submitted for a CTE capstone course at the same reporting LEA where you submitted the CTE pathway code. So here are the fields validated for the SCTE file, the CRSC, and the SCSC. Okay. These are the things you need to look at and compare. Okay, so here's the suggested resolution, and then here's a detailed process to if you want to review this later on, you could do that. So essentially, let's go back to one of the students. Let's click on this, and this should be for raw sienna camels. Okay. Apparently, you reported a CTE pathway completer for this student. So let's scroll to the bottom and click on the student career technical education section. So true enough, you have a CTE pathway here with the current academic year, pathway code 102. And then to compare this to the course, you have to click on this student course. So this is how you check if you have the proper courses plotted for the student. So right now I have a 102, 222, and then I do see a CTE state course code here. Okay, so visually, if you look at this, yeah, this is a CTE course. Then how come I'm getting this error? Now we have to delve further. So what is the important document you have to refer to that I've alluded earlier? We look at the valid code combinations document. Okay, so let's look at the valid codes combinations document, and I have that 102 in here. Okay, so for us to claim that the student is a pathway completer, the capstone course should also be reported, right? And so we have 102. So there's different 102s here. So let's look at the CT capstone. So here are your capstone courses. You have 7132 and 7135, depending on the pathway or sub-pathway that you have. So we expect that there should be a 7132 state course code or 7135 reported for that student. 132, 135. What do we have? 131. Aha. So that's the reason why you're getting a cert 123. You're claiming that the student completed the capstone course and completed the pathway. However, there's no capstone course associated to this student. If the student did not complete the capstone course yet, then by all means do not report the CTE record. Delete this record. Now, if the student reported finished the capstone course last year, or basically you followed the wrong order, then there's no way to report that unless you have to account for a capstone course this year as well. So this should always go hand in hand with a course that has the capstone course. So it is important that you follow the order of the classes when you map the schedules of your students in a CTE pathway. Okay, so let's look at another error here. Another student. This is, I believe, Jimbo Jones. Where did that student go? Yeah, Jimbo Jones. So he completed a pathway this year, 100 and 102, and we only have a student course section. So again, we only see 7131 here, which we already identified as a concentrator course and not capstone course. So this and this don't match. So there should be a 132 or 135. Okay, so either you don't report the CTE, you delete this, or you assign the student to the appropriate capstone course. You can't do that here. You have to go to the course data section in CalPads. Let me just show you that section. And then just locate the CTE capstone course and then add the student on this section here. Okay, you can't just add a record from that student detail side. And then again, this one, obviously, you've reported them as the student as a 100. And since there's just one record here, then obviously one of the pathway is missing, and this is the one of the CRSC for the other pathway. So you either have to account for that as well, add the student to the course, which will eventually add the course here, or delete that record. So key element is the student should take the courses in the right sequence to begin with, and then you only have to report a CTE record during the year the student finishes the capstone course, which says that you know, they completed a 300-hour or more course. Okay, that's how to resolve the CERT 123, and essentially that's also our process of troubleshooting here at CSIS. So once all of these are cleared, you then wait for a new snapshot once the total errors go down to 0. And if you're really stickler with counts, if you have warnings down to 0 too, then by all means, if you're ready to review the reports. And so these are the reports, review it, and then check the box that says I agree that all of my data is correct, and then click on LA approve button. Okay, so that's the process of certification. And now with regards to the certification reports, I now pass the presentation to Nate, who will discuss the reports in detail. Nate?